Okay, guys, we are live right now. Um, haven't been live in a minute because there's not really been any fights like worth going live for as of right now, but we may get more consistent with the live streams, like just on different subject matters. I think doing a live stream on mailbox money was worth it, but I didn't do it. I just did a video on mailbox money. But anyhow, we can for people who hear the replay, just leave some topics that y'all would want to cover um early. Like, yeah, leave some topics y'all will want to cover in the comment section. But today, as we know, is New Year's Day. And so people are celebrating New Year, making their goals, making their resolutions and stuff like that. And that's just that's tradition here. Nothing really changes except for, I guess you can say, it's more restrictive due to the simple fact that the COVID and the Omicron variant have kind of like taken hold of things. But for me, I am the type of person that I really don't make New Year's resolutions. The type of person that, rather let my actions speak than say what I want to do. So I'm not making no New Year's resolutions or nothing like that. Just want to show what I want to do by actually doing it. But anyhow, today is a very significant day, and the reason why this day is significant is because in 1804, on this day, um, the island of Ayiti, aka Santo Domingue, actually got its independence through very long struggle. And it was significant in the case that you had an island that was basically more populated with slaves than it was with the colonialists, the colonizers that actually rose up and did something incredible, established sovereignty, established autonomous black governance. You know what I mean? For the first time on this side of the Atlantic, that atomic anonymous black governance was established, but unfortunately it was always punished. And it's being punished to this day. Because when you look at it, like you had autonomous black governance in Africa at the time. I mean, you had, the Futatoro Emirates, you had the Futajalon Confederacy, you had the Sokoto Confederacy, you had like the Masina Confederacy, you had the what else? The Kabul Confederacy as well. So you had different ones that were autonomous black governance, but for the first time on the other side of the Atlantic, you had autonomous black governance. Um, this is very significant, seeing how the revolution started. You know, I was under the impression that the revolution started with Toussaint Louverture. Um, I thought he was the one that spearheaded it. Yeah, I thought that Jean Jacques Dessalines finished it. Along with Henry Christophe, that they were the ones who finished the revolution. But reading from my reading, especially one good book is called Avengers of the New World. That's definitely a good book to read, tap into. Um, upon reading that, you kind of find out that, Haiti was ripe for insurrection. You have to understand something. Unfortunately, when you read in all books about like bondage, and slavery, you're given like a vivid description of what the slaves had to go through. You know, some of the slaves, of course, were tortured um, on their way there. Um, you know, many slaves, of course, did not make it on their way there. Many slaves in the slave ship, unfortunately, lived in their own defecation and urine. Of course, they were also scantily clad. You know, they pretty much took that away from them, you know, the colonizer did. And so, you know, with this being said, the conditions were very heavy. Now, the other condition occurred where you became branded, and sometimes you would get branded to a point where you would switch different masters so frequently that the branding that you have would actually be almost look like tattoos covering your body because they would switch masters so much. You know what I mean? Um, then another thing you had to contend with was just like how sadistic they really were towards the slaves, the colonizers. You had to witness they did do castrations, they did castrate men. Um, they did put slaves in like an ant hill for like fire ants. They would bury slaves in an ant hill for fire ants to like eat their face, basically. They also, after being lashed to death, the slave, I think they put gunpowder in the wound to make it hurt more. There's stories that slave masters would actually put explosives in the rectums of slaves and let them off. So it was a very cruel situation. So prior to Toussaint, you had people that I didn't even know were kicking it off already, organizing themselves together. I'm just going to give a few names. The first one that comes to mind, his name is Yahya Jilo, you know, and so you had Yahya Jilo who got Maroons together and were planning insurrection. I think that insurrection was put down and Yahya was actually killed. You have another one by the name of Halalu. And you know, Halalu, he got a band of Maroons together and the same thing occurred. He was killed. You know, you had another one by the name of Harun. Harun was guilty of selling charms and you know, amulets, and I think they killed him as well. Now, the ones who really kind of like put the plan in motion more than the ones I named were Francois Nakandal, Rahmatullah alayh. They said he was a very learned man. They said that he was fluent in multiple languages. They also said that he knew how to make amulets. As a matter of fact, I think like they call amulets in Ayiti Makandals because he was so good at making them. So you had that factor. And so with that being said, you had him who worked as a coachman, I believe, get his hand cut off in a sugar mill. And so, you know, although he was able to recover because he had like an extensive knowledge of medicine, he was kind of like a herbalist. Um, this is when he planned insurrection, you know, and this is when he laid out the vision, you know. Um, I he had esoteric leanings, and also, not in addition to those esoteric leanings, I can kind of say that maybe he was possibly a Sufi. You know, he was probably possibly like a guy who had the inner sciences worked out with him. Now, he made his prediction. At first, Ayiti was occupied by Amerindians, I think Arawak Indians, and they were extinguished. Then you had the importation of African slaves, and we saw how that went off. Um, and at the hands of the French. And so yeah, so what Mackendall did is that he got a handkerchief, I think, and he said, he got a yellow one, and he said these were the people who were here before. He got a white one. And then he said, all right, it may have been a red handkerchief. Scratch that. And then he got a white one, and he's like, these are the people who occupy the island now. That stood for the Europeans. And then he got a black one, and he said these are the ones who remain on the island, and that meant the blacks. Now, he was planning on poisoning people, but unfortunately, he wanted to poison all the plantations, but unfortunately, he was ratted out. And so he was, burnt at the stake. But there's legend that he actually survived that and fled as in the form of a mosquito. That's, I think, oral tradition. Then the other one is goes by the name of Duty Boukman, Rahmatullah alayh. He is the one who kind of put the revolution in play and put the unrest in play, where he actually put boots to the ground and started attacking the colonizer. That's what happened with him in regards to him. You know, he started attacking the colonizer, and he just put boots on the ground. You know, so what happened with that is that they had the ceremony. I think they call the ceremony, uh, you know, Bois Bois Cayman, yeah, Bois Cayman ceremony. And so what happened with that is that it happened in a swampy area. He had it happened in a swampy area, and basically he made a speech about like how the God of the Europeans was not like the God of Black people. He was speaking of the injustices of like what the Europeans were doing, you know, um, being that, slavery was an injustice, right? So once that happened, um, he mobiled, he got the slaves together. I think there was a sacrifice. Just give me 1 second. I think it was either a pig that was sacrificed or a lamb that was sacrificed. I don't know, you know, for sure. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, basically, what Duty Boot Mom did was he just installed the morale in the slaves. Now, granted, this was a ragtag group of people. I mean, they really didn't have much to fight. The oppression. I mean, they had their machetes, they had rocks, they had like small knives and stuff like that, and other makeshift weapons. But the ideas were instilled for them to fight. So, you fast forward, they start fighting. They start insurrection on plantations. They start to fight. Simultaneously, you had, well, not simultaneously, but you had, I guess, rumblings that the French were dissatisfied as well. Um, the common French people were dissatisfied. So you had like French people who were like just your common French folk, and they were dissatisfied with their condition, you know, um, and that led to the French Revolution, which in return kind of affected like slavery in the colonies because that French Revolution had like a abolish like abolition uh abolition leaning. You also had a individual by the name of Jean Baptiste Bellay who participated in that revolution, and he was one of the ones who advocated for uh like emancipating the slaves on Ayiti. You have to understand something. This guy really did not have a chance to grow up in his natural habitat because of the simple fact that he was taken from Gori Island in Senegal like at 2 years old to the island Ayiti. How he survived that journey, Allah knows best. But anyhow, with these leanings, you had the emergence of Toussaint Louverture. And all I gotta say about that guy, bro, is that he is a different kind of savage. Okay, really, he's a different kind of savage. The thing is about Toussaint is he's a complicated character because of the simple fact that he wanted to emancipate the slaves. He wanted freedom on the island, but at the same time, he kind of wanted to keep the French happy. And at the same time, he would like maybe do some things that you would question, like, yo, why are you doing that? Um, but he had a reason for his madness. Uh, and he was able to rally many slaves behind him. And one of the biggest miracles of his was that he turned ragtag slaves into a highly disciplined army that was ready for action. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah. Now another thing too that needs to be said is that you know, Toussaint, he the original goal, okay, the original goal was just to abolish slavery. The original goal wasn't independence. It was just to abolish slavery from the island, set up some kind of self rule for the blacks, but still be loyal to France. Like that was the goal. And I think the reason why that was the goal is because they were looking to save bloodshed, more bloodshed, keep from more bloodshed because there was already much bloodshed with the insurrection that was caused by Duty Boukman. Now, Toussaint Louverture, he was a hell of a fighter. He was built different. And when I say he was built different, he was built different. One of the things that stuck out to me, and I'm like, damn, this guy right here, bro, is he was quiet. He was quiet off of the battlefield. You never knew what he was thinking. And he was also just a man of action, which I really think are two strong characteristics that, if anything, and I pray to Allah, if anything I take from him, because although I talk on YouTube, I think the best policy is to be quiet in real life, be like have a quiet demeanor in real life, you know. Yeah, and inshallah I strive to do that, you know. But anyhow, I want to say that with Toussaint, there were certain things he could do that probably many people couldn't do today. Number one, he would be able to be functioning off of 2 hours of sleep at night. You know, he would be able to like just be ready to go by taking a hour, like 2 hour nap, basically. Number two, he trained himself in such a way where all he needed was like two bananas and some water, when for his day-to-day being. You know what I mean? Because the reason why he had to limit himself to that diet is because, of course, he had to worry about people poisoning his food. He was doing something radical, you know. The only time he really did eat is when he went to certain elderly women's house. He would eat lalo, you know. So these were the amazing things about him. You know, even to get bargaining and even to get leverage, he aligned himself with the Spanish even. And the Spanish provided him with guns, weapons, and stuff like that, to whoop the French. And I think at one point he had to whoop the British too, because they had their hands in the cookie jar, They wanted to have their hands in the cookie jar too. Now, Toussaint, there were many things that he did that many people disagreed with, and those things being that his loyalty to France was very strong. He was under the impression that French, the French would, give, like, I want to say the French would, like, what's a good word to use? The French would, like, show some leverage and stop the slavery. He was under the impression that would happen, and unfortunately, that didn't happen. He thought wrong. Give me 1 minute. You have to understand something too. Toussaint Louverture's hands were full. His hands were extremely full with like dealing with not only the French, but he had to deal with conflicting parties on the island. One of the parties, and this is no disrespect to mixed people, but he had to deal with the mulattoes, and some of the mulattoes did not share his views. Some of the mulattoes like actually showed contempt for like pure Africans, or I guess you can say pure black people who were brought there, you know. So that's the one thing that needs to be said. Some mulattoes were under the impression that, hey, like I'm better. I got some European in me. Like what do I have to gain from like fighting alongside these guys? Because not that they would occupy a more privileged position, but they were just more respected than the 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 pure blacks on the island. You know, although they were born of slave mothers most of the time. Very rarely are you going to see like a mulatto woman who or a black man who impregnated a white woman. That was not going to be the case on the island. Um, so with these different factors, right? His hands were too full. He had to deal with a lot. He had to deal with like opposing parties and what have you. So with that being said, um, it was kind of tough for him. It was a tough little thing to deal with. But also on top of that, you have people losing patience with what was going on because of his loyalty to France. You know, and his let's get this straight. His loyalty to France was not in any way like a coon. Okay, his loyalty was France just based off of contingency that the French Revolution was supposed to the French Revolution was supposed to uh like those ideas were supposed to be applied to Ayiti. You know, that's the main thing. You know, that's what he had in mind. He didn't have in mind um that Haiti would just be a subservient to France. He didn't have that in mind. He just had the idea in mind that Haiti would be respected. That's what he had in mind. You know, that's what his game plan was. But the French did not respect that. You know, that's the unfortunate problem. The French did not look at that as an option because here you have this black man, who beat them on several occasions, and it's like, they're not going to respect that. They're like, hey, wait a minute, like you let this black dude do us in, So that's what it came down to. It was like racism. So you fast forward and you have a new order of the day, a very racist order of the day, a very fascist order of the day, and his name is Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, and so his goal was, because these happenings happen, the slaves fought for their freedom. The slaves fought for their sovereignty. Napoleon's idea was like, F that. Let's put these like Africans in their place. We ain't having that. So that was his idea, right? So you fast forward, and and you know that's what Napoleon was planning on doing. He was planning on doing that. So what Napoleon did is he got a general by the name of, I think, Leclerc or something like that, and he sent the general to Haiti to basically uh try to reestablish the old order of the day. He was like, nah, man, cut that. We ain't having that anymore. So what happened was, they made some bogus false charges against Toussaint Louverture, these bogus false charges stuck. And, Toussaint, along with the guy that I was talking about earlier, Jean Baptiste Belay, they actually were sent to France and they actually were stripped of pretty much everything. And they died alone. And they died in a cell alone. You know what I mean? So what had happened is that Toussaint raised many generals in the struggle, many generals in the struggle, um, to like carry on that charge. You had Jean-Jacques Dessalines, you had Henry Christophe, you had a guy named Moise, you had a guy named Silla, you had a guy named many guys. And the thing is, that's amazing about this is many of these guys have diverse origins. Like according to oral tradition, and shout out to Rob Moyes for this oral tradition. He actually informed me, and I don't know how true it is because you hear different stories. You hear that Jean-Jacques Dessalines, he was originally from Guinea, Conakry. You hear that, there's one excerpt that I heard that he was a Senegalese man. You hear that Henry Christophe, he was a Bambara man. You hear that, Sila. Sila is a Mandingo name, so I'm pretty sure he was a Manding. So Toussaint was able to bring all of these factors together, and so this is pretty um, amazing, you know. Just give me 1 second. Okay, my bad, my mistake, just checking something. But the thing is he was able to bring a variety of different tribes together to realize a common goal. I don't know for sure what the exact like truth of the matter is about where their origins from. All I can do is just guesstimate. And they were from like warrior tribes, so like Christoph and Dessalines. So yeah, he was able to bring them together. But unfortunately, he met his demise in France. Again, I said he was in exile, and so they put him in exile. He died in prison. He died by a very, very like how should I put it? A very, very like humiliating death. And I think he died of sickness. That was the main thing. He was sick, and they killed him. You know, and because of that sickness. So what had happened is that you know Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Henry Christophe, since France kind of got a stronghold on it, what they had to do is they had to bide their time. Jean-Jacques Dessalines had to bide his time, and also Henry Christophe had to bide his time. So what they did is they served France. But the thing is that there were many insurrections. Still, Toussaint had instilled these ideas, and the slaves weren't going to go back to slavery. They made their minds up that yeah, we ain't going back to this. So that's what happened. So when that happened, Jean, like Jean Jacques Dessalines and Christophe, they were again biding their time, so they had to put down these insurrections. So in many cases, they had to like kill other black people, you know, as a means to an ends, you know. Hold on just a minute. But what happened with that is when the opportunity got right to finally revolt, they did it. You had Christophe and Dessalines, they got together, ragtag army, and they fought the French again, you know, and they actually were successful. And and you have to keep in mind too that, you know, Haiti is a tropical climate, you know, and it's pretty unfamiliar to a lot of those French people, you know what I mean? So you had another factor that was at play in the French's like loss of power there, and that was disease. You know, you had a lot of disease in Haiti. So when these diseases hit, you know, it depleted the army of the French, you know, for the most part. So this is what happened. This is how it went down, you know, and so there were a series of skirmishes, and you know, eventually Dessalines, Christophe, they routed them, you know, and so in January 1st, 1804, you had the Black Republic. Now, you know, the main issue though, there were a couple of main issues with this. Number one, you just it's a war-torn society. You just got done dealing with war, you know, like bloodshed everywhere. You know, you got done just dealing with that. So with that being said, you have to rebuild the society. And, you know, unfortunately, the way that they wanted, like the way that um it was envisioned to rebuild the society was pretty harsh. Because the thing is Jean Jacques Dessalines and also Henry Christophe, and there was another guy, but he was more lenient. You know, that's the thing about him. He was a little bit more lenient. Uh, it, you had a mulatto who was against slavery named Alexander Petion, who, yeah, they had to like rebuild the society. I mean, and the only way they could rebuild the society was through forced labor. So, you know, Christoph was very strict in his forced labor policies, and as well was Dessalines. You know, they weren't playing. They didn't play around. They weren't going to play around. They were like, "Yo, you're going to have to work, and you have to understand something. If you were a former slave and you're being sent back to work, but you're getting to keep the fruits of your labor, you know, at least most of the fruits of your labor, then you're not going to want to go back to that, right?" So that's the thing. Like, like you're asking these slaves, hey, go back to work, you know? I don't think these slaves are gonna want to really go, or former slaves, I should say, are gonna really want to go back to work. Like, I mean, they just came from a slave system, so like they're not gonna really want to work again, you know. But I guess the slaves were made to understand that, hey, you're getting paid off, you're gonna get paid off of the fruit of your labor, you know. But it was still strict to a point where if you weren't working, there was consequences for not working, including imprisonment, you know. So yeah. So because of these like opposing viewpoints, um, you had a lot of infighting and you had a civil war actually, North versus South. You had Henry Christophe fighting Alexander Patillon. And yeah, I want to add something about the type of savage Henry Christophe was. I want to add something about how savage this guy was. Number one, he was tall. He was like 6'8", 6'9". Okay, that's numero uno, that he was very tall. Okay. Number two, he was I want to say he was such a savage that when there was this, because you have to understand something, he was a slave at one time. There, when he was dealing with his slave master, he corrected his slave master. He said, hey, this is a mistake that you made, right? The slave master did not appreciate that. So what he did was he actually slapped Crystal. You know, when Haiti got its independence, Christoph walked 20 miles to go get some get back just from the slap. He's like, oh, okay, you want to do that? I'll never forget that. And he never forgot it. And, he killed that slave master. He killed him. And as a result of killing him, he went back home. He walked 20 miles there to kill him. Then he walked back home, you know? And I'm like, wow, this guy walked 20 miles for some get back. This is a true savage. And so, those kind of stories can leave leave things in your head that like, man, these people are really descend from people who were really built different. Um, but with all the civil war and all the infighting and stuff like that, it never was able to, like, Ayiti never was able to reach its potential as an independent, Black republic. It never got to that high point. It never did, unfortunately. Uh, and we fast forward to like the early 1900s, where, um, the United States, man, when it comes to, you know, backyardism, you can count on the United States for that. When it comes to like backyardism, the United States is known for that for sure. So I mean, you have to look at the history, okay? The United States has tried to own every part of the Caribbean at one time or another in Latin America. They succeeded at making Puerto Rico like a colony, a commonwealth. They tried it with Cuba, failed. They tried it with Trinidad, failed. And they imposed um, United States currency on different places in Latin America, like El Salvador. They take US dollars over there, you know? So it's had a history of doing that. So what happened is like in the 1950s, 15, the United States occupied Haiti. They went for to impose backyardism there. But before we talk about this backyardism, though, before we even get into that, we have to keep in mind that we, we have to keep in mind that um, that that Haiti was number one, like economically blockaded too, and number two, they had to pay reparations back to France for freeing themselves from slavery. We have to keep these two things in mind, you know. So that's part of the reason why it wasn't able to actually you know actually reach its potential, reach its full potential. You know what I mean? We have to like factor that in, right? So with that being said, it never did get to the level it was supposed to reach. Fast forward, United States occupation. Um, the Haitians did not agree with it. The local Haitians, the majority Haitians did not agree with it. Who did agree with it was the petty bourgeois, who do not look like the typical Haitian. You have to keep in mind something. So fast forward, United States occupation. I think it takes place in 1915. It doesn't do Ayiti any good. As a matter of fact, one memoir from a soldier by the name, I don't remember his name, but one memoir by a Anglo-Saxon soldier said that he slept with like he fathered over 200 kids because he was trying to whiten the population. He also, you know, they also use blackface to describe Haitians, but also you have to understand something. They did it with Dominicans too. You also have to understand that at the time there were two groups. There were there was what they called the Cacals, which were led by Charlemagne Parotti, a Haitian nationalist, who they engaged the Marines with guerrilla warfare, espionage, and stuff like that. And you have to understand that there was a struggle with the Dominican Republic as well. They had a guerrilla group to keep the United States from occupying. You have to also understand that they helped each other out. So, this rift between Haitians and Dominican, Dominicans, I don't understand that much, but I kind of do understand it because, the Dominicans, embraced the Spanish side, really. They kind of were happy for the Spanish to occupy Dominican Republic, you know. But yeah, so armed struggle took place to keep um Haiti from being occupied by the United States. Like they fought in that. They were like, nah, we're fighting you guys too. We're gonna bust down and fight you guys. So that's what happened. And so after that, you had uh you had someone turn on Charlemagne Perotti, one of his brothers or so-called brothers turned on him, and as a result, the United States executed them. But eventually, occupation ended, but they still like kept a stooge in there. I mean, Haiti, I don't think has ever had free and fair elections. I could be wrong, but most of the people that have been put in power have been put there by design. Um, you know, a lot of Haitians fled uh, Papa Doublier. I think that was his name, Papa Doublier, because he was like very savage, like a butcher and things like that. It must be also understood that in his lineage, I think he has some Lebanese. You have a lot of, you have like that elite petty bourgeois minority of Haitians who don't look like your typical Haitian and who are more or less descended from Jewish, Arab, and like European origin who, control most of the country's wealth. And they were put there for a reason, you know. Um, and of course, like they're subservient to the wishes of the United States, of course, That's usually just how it works, right? So yeah, this is what happened. And believe it or not, Haiti is rich. Haiti has natural resources. Haiti has like oil. Haiti has minerals, but who controls those? And where is the money distributed to? You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't want to really go into the track record of what the United States does in Haiti, but I can tell you that NGOs have done the Haiti no good. You have had, missionaries who have engaged in like child predatory acts. You have the Red Cross who, collected money, did not go to the Haitian citizens. It actually went to a minority and whatnot. You also have a place in Haiti where, black people weren't allowed at one time. They couldn't go to it. It was an exclusivist club. You had that factor as well. So yeah, it was always never put in a position to thrive. You know, um, Prison day. Same thing going on. As a matter of fact, most of the quote unquote armed games you see in Haiti are financed by the United States of America. And the United States of America, Canada, France know that, with Haiti being destabilized, it will always be in a situation where it's like subservient and put into further debt by these countries. It realizes that. And so that's why it does what it does. That's why it arms certain groups. That's why yeah, that's why you have it the way it is. Um, it's been about an hour. I mean, it would take me forever to cover everything that I want to cover with IAT, but that's just kind of like a brief history to pay homage for what they did because when you read the stories of Christophe, um, uh, Toussaint Louverture, Jean Jacques Dessalines, you can't help but be inspired. You know what I mean? Because those are universal stories and they can apply to your daily operation in life, you know. Um, I'm going to end this live stream by giving my experience with Zoles and how they've influenced my life and stuff like that. I mean, being black, being immigrant, you are kind of like you have two things going against you. You have the fact that you're immigrant, and then you have the fact that you're black, and you have the fact that like at times you have to try to fit in. Um, as I said before, back in the day, it was not cool to be African. It was not cool to be a Caribbean. You know, um, many Malays. You know what I mean, and things like that. But you know, and also it must be said that there's not a big Haitian population in Los Angeles, so to say. You have Belizeans a lot of the time, and you have Jamaicans in the Caribbean uh, side of things in Los Angeles. Met mostly Belizeans and Jamaicans, but I guess if you want to be politically correct, Belize is in Central America. If you want to be politically correct, but I guess it's part of the CARICOM too, though. But from the Haitians I did meet and I've come across, they've always basically had my back. They've always like had my back and have been there when things popped off. You know what I mean? I can count on them, you know, when LA summers were crazy and they still are crazy by the way, for them to like be there, you know, like to like have my back basically. Um, you know, their families were always hospitable to me, warm, hospitable families. Um, they always just were chill. You know what I mean? Um, I guess you can say that, you know, because of my features and stuff like that, I was often mistaken for being Haitian. You know, like they'll be like, "Hey, yo, you Haitian?" And I'm like, "Nah," but you know, I'd be like, "Yeah, I need close enough, man. We're close enough." I just say, "Yeah, we're cousins," you know. So with that experience, we kind of had the same struggles. So I think with us having the same struggles, we were able to gel a lot, and I was able to just like be cool with them and stuff like that. And I kind of, you know, for better or for worse, kind of got my savage from them because when you, especially, listen, man, there's complete differences between New York Haitians and Florida Haitians. um, both are pretty brave and stuff like that. But a Florida Haitian, he's wild, man. He's wild. So, you know, that's the I've met both in California. I met like New York Haitians and Florida Haitians, and you see the difference. And so I got some of my savage from like the Florida Haitians because them niggas are fearless. That's all I gotta say. They are fearless. I've witnessed firsthand some of the things that they've done, and you know, seeing that we were in where we were, I'm like, damn, these guys are savage. And so it rubbed off on me, you know, because I don't know, man. It seemed like they may have had like some kind of like I want to say like some kind of divine protection when it came to their savageness, you know. Um, but what I want to say is that like yeah, man, with those experiences, with those life experiences, it just kind of like put an engine in me, you know. Because here's the thing about when you're dealing with a Zoe, when I learned from dealing with a Zoe, a lot of times Zoes are quiet, calm, collected, cool, chill. You know, they're real quiet, chill, and stuff like that. But they flip that switch Yeah, I have a story, and I don't want to give too much of the story because he's my boy, you know. But you know, as I was saying, like when it comes to Zoes, they're very like calm, quiet, collected people, but they have that switch that they can turn on, and you're like, oh shit, you know what I mean? And so that happened one time. We were at the club, you know. This is when I was into clubbing. I can tell you right now, I'm not into no damn clubbing anymore. You know what I mean? But this is like when I was like, you know, into that thing, clubbing or whatever. But we were in the club, and you know, someone from the other side of town. You can tell they were looking at us. You can tell that they wanted trouble. You know, that was what they kind of were there for. They weren't there to have a good time. They weren't there for none of that. So what happened is one of my guys, he sensed it already. You know, he sensed it, and you know, what he did is he just straight out, he just pulled out the peacekeeper and just started, you know, just basically started doing what he does. And I'm like, man, I said, this guy right here, like, he very quiet too, though, very quiet guy. And I'm like, yo, man, like this guy is built different. And so even after the fact, he just like was checking on me saying, you good, man? You good, you good, you good. And I'm like, yo, man, you need to have one of these on your team, you know, because it I can appreciate that loyalty, you know. That's heavy. Loyalty is very heavy with me, you know. I look for loyalty. You know, if you're loyal, man, I take I take that over love, you know, because love is just a blind emotion for most people. You know, like when people say I love you know, like it's just blind emotion, in my opinion. So yeah, I kind of that's one thing I learned from them is like to have that switch, you know, and you know that switch you turn on, you're mild, you're collective, you're calm, you're cool, you're respectful to everybody, but when you're disrespected or when your life is in jeopardy, turn on that switch, you know, and just go at it and go savage. So that's one thing I took from my interaction with Zoes, you know. Also, I took the interaction of just having very good work ethic because, you know, some of the Zoes I knew, you know, they were like going to school, working 2 or 3 jobs, you know, just so they can get to it. You know what I mean? So that kind of got um, put in me too, you know. And let's not mention that, you know, I'll end on this note since it's been like an hour and 5 minutes. Let's not let's not forget, like, you know, the boxing side of it. You know, I've met I know like about 3 Haitian boxers. Yeah, I know like three. I know three who invited me to always like train and always get tips and things like that from them. And you know, those tips help my boxing out in numerous ways because yeah, man, they just, you know, wanted to look out for me, you know, and so I can appreciate that as well, you know, with them. And so, yeah, man, it was just good experiences, man. I've had good experience with them, and that's not to say that all of them are gonna be like good. You know, you have good and bad in every group of people, right? You have it. You know, that's just a general rule in life. You have good and bad in everybody. But what I will say, you know, and I'll give an example. There's this one Zoe that just got caught right now. He was doing PPP fraud. You know what I mean? He was doing PPP loan fraud, and so that means that you know there's good and bad in everybody. So yeah. Um, with that being said, man, I think I'll end this stream. You know, shout out to my Zoes. I really do love y'all. And you know, I know I said love is I know I just like kind of like backtracked and said loyalty is more important than love, but you know, I do love y'all. I do appreciate y'all. I do appreciate y'all history a lot, and I'm still learning about y'all history. And the move, inshallah, you know, inshallah, we're gonna learn more about the history, and maybe inshallah down the line we can illustrate that history. You know what I mean? We can illustrate it, make it visual. You know, because that would be the ultimate goal, is to make a visual history, because I think a visual history would serve so good, you know, for everybody to know. You know what I mean? If you have a visual history, that would be a pretty good thing, you know, having visual history. So a picture is painted, you know what I mean? So yeah. But anyhow, man, I hope whoever tuned into this live stream benefited from it somehow. And if you didn't benefit from it, my bad. And if you are a Zoe and you tuned into the live stream, let me know where I went wrong. Correct me. And also educate me, you know, educate me on like different things about it. And maybe we can do a live stream together and you can give me your insight that, you know, that I may have got incorrect, you know, because I'm not past being corrected at all. You know, that's part of learning, right? But anyhow, Fula signing out. Thanks for stopping by, whoever stopped by. Um, yeah. Um, I guess since I'm here, I need to just say one more thing to clear the air. You know, I'm just gonna say it real quick. But um there's been like a lot of comments on my page. Like there's been a lot of, I guess you can say, I'm not gonna call them trolls, but just people who disagree with me, and people who you know, who just don't don't like gel with me for whatever reason. I'm not going to name any names. You know, I'm not going to do that. We don't do that on this channel. But what I will say to those people who don't gel with me and stuff like that is, you can't like put your expectations of me on me. Like you can't put, like you can't change who I am. You know, I'm going to be me. You know, and if you don't agree with what I have to say, or if you don't agree with what I stand on, then that's fine. You know, no problem. But I'm just wondering, like, why would you waste the energy to like not only like stalk my channel, you know what I mean? Like actually pay attention to my channel when I sure as hell don't pay attention to your channel. Like, why would you put the energy into doing that? Well, when I said before, and I'll say it again, I'll never make a video about someone who dislikes me. Like, why would I put the energy in doing that? Like, that makes no sense. You know, so like just understand that I'm gonna be me. You know, I'm gonna be me. I think maybe you should listen to that Trade the Truth song. You know, like listen to that song. I'm gonna keep doing me. Listen to that song, and you'll understand that I'm just gonna keep doing me, man. You know, how you feel is not my business. You know what I mean? And again, I'm just gonna leave it at this. I'm not gonna be the type of dude who's gonna dot someone. I'm not gonna be the type of dude who's gonna expose someone. You know, another channel holder. I'm not gonna do it. Like the only person I'm gonna like expose is like these hoteps who are doing all this faulty crap. Like who are doing like just obvious stuff. You know what I mean? I'll do that, but I'm not. I kid you not. I'm not gonna like go out of my way if there's another channel holder who dislikes me or disagrees with how I think or how I move. Like I'm just not gonna do that, you know. And so if you don't agree, fine, you know, cool. But don't like come on my page thinking that leaving comments is just gonna like make me like, you know what I mean, give you that energy. I'm not gonna give you that energy. I'm just gonna delete your comment and just keep it moving. So, you know, just do the same. You know, do the same and stop wasting your energy, you know? Like I mean again, as I said, and I mean this but every sense of the word, you know? I'm not gonna go to like a person's page that I dislike and give them energy. I'm not going to go to a person's page and leave a comment on their page about like, oh, you're this, oh, you're that. So, I mean, take heed and do the same. Take heed and do the same. Don't don't do it with me, you know. Don't do it with me. Just agree to disagree and keep it moving. You know, I don't want to get into it, but I thought like most people I would think that are adults on this platform. And some of these adults have kids. So, I mean, if you have kids and you guys are adults, like, come on, man, what are we doing here? But, you know, it's all good. No problem. You know, it's all love, man. But I'm just saying that as a disclosure. But, you know, we're going to end this stream. And, you know, whoever tuned in, merci. And we'll be back with another one. All right, Fuller signing out and Jaram.